Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting, and I'm coming to you today to talk to you and give you a cautionary tale about what can happen. As you know, Twain is a business advisory and a real estate consultancy. One of the important things that we do, which I consider to be tremendously important, is that we protect wealth that has already been developed, and we do that by focusing on real estate, which continues, honestly, to be a great way for an individual to develop wealth. Now, before we get into this little story I'm going to tell, I want you to think about what I'm going to say here. You work your whole life, you create your savings, you're building your family's assets. You may want desperately to have a business, but you're either afraid or not knowledgeable enough to know how to start one, or say you know, and you started a business and now you want to build that business. And then what happens? Well, there are a lot of things that can happen. For example, a rogue unexpected lawsuit can come along. It can take it all away. It can wipe you out. Sudden medical expenses can come and they can wipe you out. Unforeseen death comes and it can wipe you out. Natural disasters, which seem to be increasing, could wipe you out. Bacterial or viral pandemic like what we have just had, and honestly, what is still going on, and which also seems to be increasing, could wipe you out. And probably 100 other things that either you or I could think of. Now, let me ask you, do any of these things that I've just mentioned concern you? Are you experiencing any of these things that I have mentioned right now in your life? Do you want to ensure that you have the best protection from these things that is possible? If there was a way to protect yourself against these things, would you want to know about that? Would you want to have that kind of protection for yourself? Would you like to be as invisible as you could be from these dangers to your business, your assets, and your family? Let me tell you about kind of a horror story. It's a case that I worked during that latter period of the 4 years that I was working in law offices, which is I talk to people I very rarely do, but I was doing at that time. In those days, there was a problem with so-called mortgage consultants. One of these came to this woman who our office was later retained by. I talked to her, and her story was that she had a house close by to the office. This house was her pride and joy, as you can imagine. She loved this house, and she had this fear of losing it. A mortgage consultant contacted her and dangled a cash payment for refinancing at a better rate, and this was a common ploy at the time. This was in the Audis, as they call them, in the 2000s. She went for it, and because a lot of these mortgage refinances were essentially scams, long story short, a foreclosure process started on the property. We were retained to stop it. I really was not involved in this case. I knew about it. As I say, I talked with the lady. I maybe did one or two things to help out, but really it was somebody else's case. But long story short, this woman basically had her greatest nightmare come true. She eventually had to move out of this house. Now, mind you, this is an older woman. When you're young, you can handle these things better, but this is not a young person. This is an older person. And she worked at the post office, and she was reduced in the end to having to move herself from this beautiful Rambler home, probably 2,000 square feet, to a little room at a Motel 6. She further told me that she had to get up extremely early in the morning to catch a bus, which was not a straight shot. Unfortunately, she had to transfer at least once. And that process took 2.5 hours for her to get to her job at the post office that she worked at. And then, after her shift, of course, 2.5 hours on the bus back to the Motel 6 and her little room. Day in, day out. This was her worst nightmare come true. Now, let me assure you at this point that if you think that I'm just telling tales, this horror story actually happened. I know it from firsthand knowledge. I'm not making stuff up in order to scare you. What I'm telling you is that this stuff is out there, and this was this woman's fate. And honestly, nothing was done to help her, bottom line. Why little or nothing was done to help her, I don't want to get into, but in the end, it doesn't matter, because it wasn't enough. She didn't have the resources to do what little that could be done, and so basically, in the end, she was let alone to her fate. Now, in closing, I ask you again the questions that I asked you at the start of this video. Do any of these things that I have just mentioned to you, do they concern you? Are you under any illusion that these things might not happen to you, but they're just something that happens to the other guy? Are you experiencing any of these things that I have mentioned right now in your life? Do you want to ensure that you have the best protection from these things that is possible? If there was a way to protect yourself against these things, would you want to know about that? And if you answered yes to any of these questions that I asked you, I invite you to do one or both of the following. Number one, go to the company site, which is www.jakelaw.me. Please review it. There's a lot of great information there. We've got some products and services that are just really suited for the beginning. And when I say beginning, I mean people who are just starting, or even those who haven't started yet, but who want to have a business. And also for the intermediate or advanced business owners as well. Number two, set up a free consultation with me to talk about your situation, because there is a process that I call virtual invisibility, that can save you from just a whole bunch of trouble, whole bunch of anxiety, a whole bunch of concern, whole bunch of sleepless nights, help you sleep better at night, knowing that you're as protected as you can be. This is the same system that Twain has used successfully. Many students and clients who can now sleep at night knowing that they and their assets are virtually invisible. So do those things. And for now, this is Jake for Twain Consulting, and I will see you in the next video.